In the bustling heart of Atlanta, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and streets buzzed with endless activity, lived Angela Wilson, a woman whose life was about to take an unexpected turn. As a single mother and corporate lawyer, her days were a carefully orchestrated dance of court appearances, client meetings, and precious moments with her young daughter Lily. Every morning, Angela would wake up at 5 a.m., her alarm cutting through the peaceful silence of their cozy apartment. She'd tiptoe to the kitchen, careful not to wake her sleeping 4-year-old, and prepare for the day ahead. The quiet moments with her coffee were her only chance to breathe before the whirlwind began. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Lily's sweet voice would echo through the hallway around 6 a.m., right on schedule. Angela would smile, setting aside the case files she'd been reviewing. These morning routines were their special time together, making heart-shaped pancakes, picking out Lily's clothes, and brushing her long brown hair while singing their favorite songs. But beneath the surface of their morning ritual lay a growing anxiety. Angela's law firm had recently taken on several high-profile cases, and the demands on her time were increasing. She'd been relying on her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to watch Lily after preschool, but the kind woman's arthritis was getting worse, making it difficult for her to keep up with an energetic 4-year-old. "I just can't do it anymore, dear," Mrs. Chen had told her last week, her eyes filled with genuine regret. "Lily is a wonderful child, but I'm not as young as I used to be." That conversation had sent Angela into a spiral of worry. She'd tried everything: daycare centers, all had waiting lists, after-school programs, none aligned with her unpredictable schedule, and even reaching out to other parents from Lily's preschool. Nothing seemed to fit. One evening, after tucking Lily into bed, Angela sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by sticky notes and open laptop tabs. Her eyes were tired from scrolling through countless childcare websites. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, but sleep felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Her biggest case was going to trial in 2 weeks, and she still hadn't found a reliable caregiver for Lily. Just as she was about to give up for the night, a sponsored post caught her eye. "Trusted Care, connecting families with experienced nannies." The website looked professional, with genuine reviews and detailed background check procedures. Angela clicked through the profiles, her hope growing with each promising candidate. Then she saw her. Rose Thompson's profile stood out like a beacon of hope. 15 years of experience, glowing references from long-term families, and a warm smile that reached her eyes. Her profile mentioned specializations in early childhood education and first aid certification. She was available for full-time care and lived just 20 minutes away. Angela's hands shook slightly as she typed out a message. It was late, but she had to try. To her surprise, Rose responded within minutes. They arranged to meet for coffee the next day during Angela's lunch break. The coffee shop was busy when Angela arrived, her suit slightly wrinkled from a morning in court. She spotted Rose immediately. She looked exactly like her profile picture, dressed professionally in a simple blouse and slacks. What struck Angela most was how Rose's face lit up when she talked about her previous charges, showing genuine love for her work. "I believe in creating a nurturing environment where children can learn through play," Rose explained, stirring her tea. "Every child is unique, and it's important to adapt to their individual needs." They discussed everything from daily schedules to emergency procedures. Rose didn't flinch when Angela mentioned Lily's peanut allergy. Instead, she pulled out a small notebook and carefully wrote down all the details. She shared stories about her experience with other children with allergies, describing the precautions she took to keep them safe. "Would it be possible to meet Lily?" Rose asked. "I always think it's important for children to feel comfortable with their caregiver before starting." Angela arranged a play date that weekend. She watched nervously as Rose interacted with Lily, but her anxiety melted away as she saw her daughter's face light up. Rose had brought simple craft supplies: colored paper, safe scissors, and stickers, and soon they were creating a magical paper garden together. The trial period went smoothly. Rose arrived early each morning, prepared healthy snacks, and sent Angela regular updates throughout the day. Lily thrived under her care, coming home with stories about their adventures at the park and proud displays of artwork. "Mommy, look what we made," Lily would exclaim, holding up paintings, craft projects, and even simple science experiments. Rose had a gift for turning everyday activities into learning opportunities. Angela felt like she could finally breathe. Her performance at work improved now that she wasn't constantly worried about childcare. Her colleagues noticed the change, commenting on her renewed energy and focus. She even started taking on pro bono cases again, something she'd had to cut back on when managing her time became too difficult. The arrangement seemed perfect, almost too perfect. Angela sometimes caught herself wondering how she'd gotten so lucky. But then she'd come home to find Lily happily engaged in an educational activity, her daughter's laughter filling their home, and she'd push those doubts aside. One morning, as Angela was rushing out the door to court, Rose stopped her. "Don't worry about dinner tonight," she said with a kind smile. "Lily and I are going to make a special healthy pasta dish. It'll be ready when you get home." Angela felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness. It had been so long since someone had taken care of them like this. She hugged Rose impulsively, whispering a heartfelt thank you before heading to work. That day, Angela threw herself into preparation for her upcoming trial. She was representing a small business owner against a large corporation, and the stakes were high. Time flew by as she reviewed depositions and prepared her arguments. Everything was falling into place. Her career was soaring, Lily was happy, and their home life felt more balanced than it had in years. Angela finally felt like she was managing to be both the mother and professional she'd always wanted to be. But life has a way of testing us just when we think we've figured it all out. As Angela sat in her office that afternoon, preparing for a crucial cross-examination, her phone lit up with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen, her heart skipping a beat when she saw Rose's name. She had no way of knowing that this call would shatter the careful balance she'd worked so hard to create, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about trust, safety, and the people we invite into our lives. Note: this ends Part 1, setting up the characters and situation while building tension for the dramatic events to come. The language is kept simple and relatable, focusing on human emotions and everyday details that readers can connect with. The narrative avoids any content that might violate platform policies while maintaining reader interest through realistic character development and mounting suspense. Rose's introduction into Angela and Lily's life felt like a breath of fresh air. Each morning, she would arrive precisely at 7:30 a.m., carrying a colorful tote bag filled with new activities for the day. Her warm presence and organized nature brought a sense of calm to their usually hectic mornings. "I brought some special art supplies today," Rose would often announce, pulling out craft materials that always seemed perfectly suited to Lily's interests. She had an uncanny ability to know exactly what would capture the 4-year-old's imagination. The changes in their home were subtle but significant. The refrigerator door slowly filled with artwork, finger paintings, construction paper collages, and drawings of imaginary gardens. Rose had created a special corner in the living room called the Learning Nook, complete with child-sized furniture and educational toys. Angela noticed how Lily's vocabulary was expanding. During dinner, her daughter would excitedly share new words she'd learned during her days with Rose. "Mommy, did you know that butterflies start as caterpillars? It's called metamorphosis." Lily had announced one evening, carefully pronouncing each syllable just as Rose had taught her. The nanny's references had been impeccable. Angela had spoken to 3 different families, each praising Rose's dedication and professionalism. One mother had tearfully explained how Rose had helped her son overcome his fear of reading. Another shared stories about Rose's quick thinking during a minor kitchen accident. "You won't find anyone better," they all said. "We only let her go because we moved out of state." Rose's experience showed in countless small ways. She kept detailed daily logs of Lily's activities, meals, and moods. She took photos of their projects and adventures, sending them to Angela throughout the day. Each picture showed Lily beaming with joy, deeply engaged in whatever activity Rose had planned. Their routine fell into a comfortable rhythm. Rose would prepare healthy snacks, lead educational activities, and even started teaching Lily simple Spanish phrases. "Buenos dias, mama." Lily would greet Angela each evening, giggling with pride at her new language skills. One particularly touching moment came when Rose helped Lily create a surprise for Angela's birthday. They had transformed the dining room into an art gallery, displaying weeks' worth of secret projects. Lily had painted her mother's portrait, complete with her work clothes and briefcase. Rose had helped her write "World's Best Mummy" in careful, wobbly letters across the top. "Rose helped me make it perfect," Lily had explained, bouncing with excitement as Angela examined each piece. "She showed me how to mix the colors and everything." The other parents at Lily's preschool noticed the positive changes too. During pickup times, they would comment on Lily's increasing confidence and social skills. Several asked Angela for Rose's contact information, hoping to hire her for their own children. "I'm sorry," Angela would say, feeling a mixture of pride and protectiveness. "Rose's schedule is completely full with us right now." Rose seemed to anticipate their needs before they even arose. When Angela mentioned an upcoming business trip, Rose immediately offered to stay overnight with Lily. When Lily developed a slight cold, Rose knew exactly which child-friendly remedies would help, all while strictly following Angela's medical preferences. Their trust in Rose grew stronger each day. She became more than just a nanny. She was becoming part of their family. Angela started including her in dinner plans, and they would often sit together after Lily went to bed, discussing the day's events and planning future activities. "I've never met anyone who understands children the way you do," Angela told Rose one evening. "We're so lucky to have found you." Rose had smiled warmly, reaching out to squeeze Angela's hand. "I'm the lucky one," she replied. "Lily is such a special child, and you're such a dedicated mother. I love being part of your lives." 3 months into their arrangement, Angela was preparing for her biggest case yet. The trial was set to begin the following week, and she needed to focus completely on her preparations. Knowing that Lily was in Rose's capable hands gave her the peace of mind to work late when needed. That particular morning had started like any other. Angela had kissed Lily goodbye, grateful for Rose's reassuring presence as she headed to the office. She had a crucial meeting with expert witnesses scheduled for the afternoon, and her mind was already running through her list of questions. The morning passed in a blur of depositions and case files. Angela was in her element, confident and focused. Her legal assistant had just brought in her 3rd cup of coffee when her phone buzzed. Seeing Rose's name on the screen, she smiled, expecting another cute photo of Lily's latest art project. But something was wrong. Instead of the usual cheerful message, Rose's voice came through shaky and urgent. "Angela, you need to come home right now. There's been an incident with Lily." Angela's blood ran cold. The coffee cup slipped from her hand, spilling across her desk and onto her carefully organized notes. But she barely noticed. Her whole world narrowed to Rose's next words. I was trying to help her," Rose's voice cracked. "I thought I knew better. I thought I could fix it." The sounds of sirens filtered through the phone, and Angela's heart stopped. In the background, she could hear Lily crying, a sound that would haunt her dreams for months to come. "What did you do?" Angela whispered, already grabbing her keys and running toward the elevator. "Rose, what did you do to my daughter?" The answer would change everything. As Angela raced through the city streets, her mind spinning with horrible possibilities, she had no idea that this was just the beginning. The perfect life she thought she'd built was about to unravel, revealing a truth more disturbing than anything she could have imagined. The drive home was the longest 15 minutes of Angela's life. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she navigated through traffic, each red light feeling like an eternity. She kept her phone on speaker, listening to Rose's increasingly panicked voice mixed with the sound of paramedics in the background. "The ambulance is here," Rose was saying, her voice shaking. "They're taking her vital signs. She's breathing, but her face is so swollen. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to help." Angela's mind raced with questions. What had happened to her perfectly healthy daughter in the few hours since she'd left for work? She pressed harder on the accelerator, her lawyer's instincts already cataloging every detail of Rose's words, noting the guilt and fear in her voice. When she pulled into her driveway, the scene was chaos. An ambulance's flashing lights painted the peaceful suburban street in harsh reds and blues. Neighbors stood on their porches, whispering and pointing. Mrs. Chen from next door was crying, holding her hands over her mouth in shock. Angela barely put her car in park before jumping out. She ran toward the ambulance, her heels clicking against the pavement. The paramedics were loading a small stretcher into the back, and there was Lily, her precious daughter's face nearly unrecognizable from swelling. Angela's heart stopped at the sight. "Ma'am, are you the mother?" A paramedic stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "Your daughter is having a severe allergic reaction. We've administered epinephrine, but we need to get her to the hospital immediately." "Allergic reaction?" Angela's voice cracked. "But she only has a peanut allergy, and Rose knows that. We went over it 100 times." Her voice trailed off as she spotted Rose standing by the front door, clutching something in her hands. As Angela moved closer, she could see what it was, a small glass bottle with a handwritten label, "Natural peanut extract, allergy cure." "I was only trying to help," Rose whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I've done it before with other children. Small doses build up immunity. It's perfectly natural." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Angela stared at the bottle, then at Rose, horror dawning on her face. "You deliberately exposed my daughter to peanuts? After I explicitly told you about her allergy?" "It's an alternative medicine technique," Rose continued, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "I've been giving her tiny amounts in her morning smoothies for weeks. Today I thought she was ready for a slightly larger dose." Angela felt her knees go weak. Weeks. This woman had been poisoning her daughter for weeks. "You had no right," she managed to say, her lawyer's training helping her maintain control despite the rage and fear threatening to overwhelm her. "You're not a doctor. You're not even a real nurse, are you?" Rose's expression changed, something darker flickering behind her eyes. "I have more experience than any doctor. They just push pills and shots, but I know natural cures. I've helped dozens of children overcome their allergies." "Ma'am," the paramedic called urgently. "We need to leave now. Would you like to ride with your daughter?" Angela turned away from Rose, her decision immediate. "Officer," she called to the police car that had just pulled up. "This woman has been secretly giving my daughter allergens without my knowledge or consent. I want to press charges." As she climbed into the ambulance, Angela could hear Rose protesting as the officers approached her. "You don't understand. I was helping her. Ask the other families. They'll tell you." The ambulance doors closed, shutting out Rose's voice. Angela held Lily's small hand, watching the monitors tracking her daughter's heartbeat. The paramedics worked efficiently around them, adjusting IVs and checking vitals. "Mummy," Lily whispered through swollen lips. "I don't feel good. Rose said the special smoothie would make me stronger." Angela fought back tears, squeezing her daughter's hand gently. "I know, baby. I know. You're going to be okay now. Mummy's here." At the hospital, things moved quickly. Doctors and nurses swarmed around Lily, administering more medications and running tests. Angela answered their questions mechanically, her mind still trying to process the betrayal. A police officer arrived to take her statement. As Angela recounted everything she knew about Rose, inconsistencies began to surface. The officer made some calls, and within an hour, disturbing information came to light. "Ma'am," the officer said gravely, "the name and credentials Rose Thompson provided you are false. Her real name is Patricia Montgomery, and she's been investigated in 3 other states for practicing medicine without a license." Angela sank into a chair, the room spinning around her. "But her references, I called them myself." "We believe those were accomplices," the officer explained. "We've seen this before with her. She sets up elaborate false identities, complete with fake references and background checks. She targets busy professional parents, gains their trust, then experiments on their children with dangerous alternative treatments." As Angela listened, she felt physically ill. Every moment of trust, every kind gesture, every shared smile, it had all been part of an elaborate scheme, and her daughter had paid the price. A doctor appeared in the doorway, bringing Angela back to the present moment. "Your daughter is stabilized," she announced. "The epinephrine did its job, and we're giving her steroids and antihistamines to prevent a rebound reaction. We'd like to keep her overnight for observation." Angela nodded, relief washing over her. But as she walked to Lily's room, her mind was already racing ahead. How many other children had been subjected to Rose's, no, Patricia's, dangerous experiments? How had she missed the signs? And most importantly, how could she protect other families from going through the same nightmare? As she watched her daughter sleeping peacefully in the hospital bed, Angela made a decision. This wasn't over. As both a mother and a lawyer, she had the skills and resources to ensure that justice would be served. Patricia Montgomery's days of experimenting on innocent children were about to come to an end. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room cast shadows across Lily's sleeping face as Angela sat beside her bed, gently stroking her daughter's hand. The swelling had started to subside, but angry red patches still marked her skin, visible reminders of the betrayal they'd endured. Detective Reynolds arrived early the next morning, her notepad already filled with preliminary findings. She pulled up a chair next to Angela, speaking in hushed tones to avoid waking Lily. "We searched your house last night," the detective began, her expression grim. "We found something you need to see." She pulled out her phone, showing Angela photos of a locked box discovered in Rose's, Patricia's, tote bag hidden beneath the children's art supplies. Angela's hand flew to her mouth as she scrolled through the images. Dozens of small bottles, each labeled with different children's names and treatment plans. Detailed notebooks documenting reactions, dosages, and schedules. Photographs of other children, some showing signs of allergic reactions similar to Lily's. "This goes deeper than we initially thought," Detective Reynolds explained. "We've identified at least 12 other families across 3 states. She would stay with each family just long enough to conduct her experiments, then disappear when things went wrong." A nurse entered to check Lily's vitals, smiling reassuringly at her steady readings. After she left, Angela turned back to the detective. "How did she fool everyone?" "I checked her references, her background. She had help," Detective Reynolds replied, flipping through her notes. "We're looking into a network of alternative medicine practitioners who provided false documentation. They believe they're helping families by curing allergies through exposure therapy. But none of them have medical training. They're essentially using children as test subjects." Angela's legal training kicked in. That's criminal negligence at minimum. Practicing medicine without a license, child endangerment, fraud. She paused, a thought striking her. "The other families, have you contacted them?" The detective nodded. "We're reaching out now. Some cases go back several years. Most families were too embarrassed to report what happened, or they believed her when she claimed their children's reactions were just part of the healing process." As they talked, Lily began to stir. Angela quickly wiped away her tears, putting on a brave smile for her daughter. "Good morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Better," Lily mumbled, her voice still raspy. "Can we go home? I don't like it here." "Soon, baby," Angela promised, kissing her forehead. "The doctors just want to make sure you're all better first." Detective Reynolds quietly excused herself, but not before sharing one last piece of information. "We're bringing in her known associates for questioning this afternoon. Would you be willing to come to the station once Lily's released? Your testimony could help build a stronger case." Angela agreed, her mind already forming a plan. As a lawyer, she knew the importance of documentation. She began writing down everything she could remember about their interactions with Patricia, every conversation, every strange comment, every moment that should have raised red flags. The hospital discharge came that afternoon. As Angela helped Lily pack up her things, a young resident doctor stopped by with care instructions. "I heard about what happened," she said kindly. "You should know that supervised medical immunotherapy exists for food allergies, but it's a careful, controlled process done by trained allergists. What that woman did was incredibly dangerous." Back home, the house felt different. Angela couldn't look at the learning nook or the artwork on the fridge without seeing signs she should have noticed earlier. She took down the pictures, carefully preserving them as evidence, each one now a reminder of their narrow escape. The police station was busy when they arrived later that day. Angela had arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch Lily in the children's area while she gave her statement. As she walked through the station, she noticed other parents there, some she recognized from Patricia's photos. One mother broke down crying when she saw Angela. "I should have reported her," she sobbed. "My son was in the hospital for 3 days after her treatment, but she convinced me it was normal. She said his body was just detoxifying." The questioning room was small but comfortable. Angela spent hours going through every detail with the investigators. As she talked, a pattern emerged. Patricia had perfected her approach over years, always targeting busy professional parents, especially single mothers. She would become indispensable, gaining their trust before starting her dangerous experiments. The worst part, Angela explained, her voice steady despite her emotions, was how she manipulated the children. She made them believe they were getting special smoothies or magic medicine that would make them stronger. She turned it into a game. The investigation revealed more disturbing details. Patricia had no medical training whatsoever. Her knowledge came from online forums and self-proclaimed natural healing groups. She truly believed she was helping children, which made her actions even more dangerous. Late that evening, as Angela was preparing to leave, Detective Reynolds rushed in with news. "We found her documents," she announced. "Real ones, not the fakes she used for employment. You won't believe this. She lost her own child to a food allergy 15 years ago. That's what started all this." The revelation hit Angela hard. Understanding the motivation didn't excuse the crimes, but it added a layer of tragedy to an already heart-wrenching situation. Here was a woman so broken by her own loss that she convinced herself she was saving other children, when in reality she was putting them in terrible danger. As Angela drove home that night, Lily sleeping peacefully in her car seat, she thought about all the other families affected by Patricia's misguided mission. The case would take months to build, but she was determined to see it through. Not just as a witness, but as an advocate for all the children who had been put at risk. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reynolds. "Another family just came forward. This might be bigger than we thought." The investigation into Patricia Montgomery's activities grew larger with each passing day. Angela's dining room table had become a makeshift command center covered with documents, statements, and photographs. Each new piece of evidence revealed another layer to the disturbing story. Detective Reynolds had become a regular visitor to their home, often stopping by in the evenings to update Angela on the case's progress. One particularly cold evening, she arrived with a thick stack of files under her arm. "We've connected the dots across 5 states now," she explained, spreading out a map marked with red pins. Each pin represents a family affected by Patricia's experiments. The pattern is always the same. She stays for 3 to 4 months, implements her treatment plan, then disappears when something goes wrong. Angela studied the map, her heart heavy. "How many families total?" 28 confirmed cases so far, the detective replied, "but we suspect there are more. Many families are still too scared or embarrassed to come forward." The support group Angela had started was growing. They met weekly in a local community center, sharing stories and providing emotional support for each other. Parents would often break down crying as they described their experiences, the guilt they felt for trusting Patricia with their children. "She seemed so perfect," one father shared during a meeting, his voice cracking. "My wife had just passed away, and I was struggling to balance work and caring for our son. Patricia came into our lives like an angel. By the time I realized what she was doing with her natural remedies, my son had already been hospitalized twice." The online parenting forums were buzzing with discussions about the case. Angela had worked with Detective Reynolds to post warnings and information, helping other families recognize the signs they might have missed. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the country. One morning, Angela received a call from a morning news show wanting to feature the story. After careful consideration and discussions with the detective, she agreed to appear. It was important to spread awareness and prevent other families from falling victim to similar schemes. The day of the interview, Angela sat in the studio, lights bright and hot around her. The host leaned forward, her expression concerned. "Tell us, how did someone like Patricia Montgomery manage to fool so many experienced parents?" Angela took a deep breath. She was incredibly skilled at manipulation. She knew exactly what overwhelmed parents needed to hear. She provided references, showed us certificates, all fake, we later learned. But more than that, she became part of our families. She filled a need we all had for support and understanding. The interview sparked a national conversation about childcare safety and the dangers of unauthorized medical treatments. Child protection agencies across the country began reviewing their screening procedures for caregivers. The online platform where Patricia had posted her profile announced major changes to their verification process. Back at the police station, the evidence room dedicated to the case had grown significantly. Detective Reynolds walked Angela through the latest findings. "We've uncovered her entire network," she explained, pointing to a complex chart on the wall. "There are at least 6 other people involved in providing false documents and references. They're all part of the same alternative medicine community." The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. A former member of Patricia's alternative medicine group reached out to the police, unable to stay silent any longer. Her testimony provided crucial details about how the network operated. "They truly believed they were helping," Detective Reynolds explained to Angela. "They had convinced themselves that traditional medicine was harmful, that their methods were the only way to cure allergies. Patricia was seen as a hero in their community. The district attorney's office was building a strong case. They had scheduled a grand jury hearing, and Angela would be one of the key witnesses. As she prepared her testimony with the prosecutors, she couldn't help but think about Patricia's own tragedy, losing her child to a food allergy. Understanding doesn't mean excusing," the prosecutor reminded her gently. "Her personal loss explains her actions but doesn't justify putting other children at risk." One evening, as Angela helped Lily with her homework, her daughter asked a question that stopped her in her tracks. "Mommy, why did Rose want to make me sick?" Angela pulled her daughter close, choosing her words carefully. "She didn't want to make you sick, sweetie. She thought she was helping, but she was very wrong about how to do that. That's why we only take medicine from real doctors now, right?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Like Dr. Chen at the allergy clinic." "Exactly," Angela smiled, grateful for their new allergist who had helped Lily understand her condition properly. "He knows the right way to keep you safe and healthy." The investigation was reaching its final stages. Patricia and her associates had been arrested, and the evidence against them was overwhelming. But as Angela reviewed her testimony one last time, she received an unexpected phone call. "Mrs. Wilson," an unfamiliar voice said. "This is reporter Thomas from the City Tribune. We've uncovered something about Patricia Montgomery's past that changes everything. Could we meet?" Angela's hand tightened on the phone as the reporter continued. What he revealed would add a shocking new dimension to an already complex case, one that would force everyone involved to question everything they thought they knew about Patricia Montgomery's true motivations. Angela met reporter Thomas at a quiet cafe downtown, away from the busy courthouse where preparations for the trial were underway. The veteran journalist pulled out a thick manila envelope as soon as they sat down. "What I'm about to show you changes the entire narrative," he explained, carefully spreading out documents across the table. "We did a deep dive into Patricia Montgomery's background, not just the past 15 years, but everything." The first document was a medical report from 20 years ago. Angela's eyes widened as she read it. According to the report, Patricia had never had a child of her own. The story about losing a child to food allergies, the motivation everyone had assumed drove her actions, was another elaborate lie. But why? Angela asked, her hands shaking as she looked through the papers. Why would she make up such a tragic story? "That's where it gets interesting," reporter Thomas replied, pulling out more documents. "Patricia Montgomery isn't just one person, she's created dozens of identities over the years. Each one has a different tragic backstory, carefully crafted to gain sympathy and trust." The reporter showed Angela newspaper clippings spanning 2 decades. Different names, different cities, but always the same pattern. A woman would appear in a community, present herself as someone with a personal connection to whatever issue she was targeting, gain trust, and then exploit that trust. Angela immediately called Detective Reynolds, who arrived within minutes. As she reviewed the new information, her expression grew increasingly troubled. "This completely changes our profile," the detective said, making rapid notes. "We thought we were dealing with someone traumatized by personal loss, but this is much more calculated. She's a professional con artist who specifically targets vulnerable families." The discovery led to a flurry of activity. The prosecution team had to revise their entire strategy. What they had thought was a case about misguided alternative medicine was actually part of a much larger pattern of deliberate fraud. More victims began to emerge, not just families affected by unauthorized allergy treatments, but others who had been targeted in different ways. Patricia had posed as various types of caregivers and medical practitioners, each time creating elaborate backstories that would appeal to her intended victims. "Look at this," Detective Reynolds pointed to a timeline they'd created. In 2019, she was in Seattle, claiming to be a grief counselor who had lost her husband. In 2020, she appeared in Miami as a physical therapist who had miraculously recovered from a severe injury. Each time, she used her fake personal story to gain trust before starting her schemes. The support group meetings took on a new tone as this information came to light. Parents struggled to reconcile the caring person they had known with this calculated deceiver. "I told her things I'd never told anyone else," one mother shared, wiping away tears. "She said she understood my struggles because she'd been through the same thing. It was all lies." Angela spent hours reviewing her own interactions with Patricia, seeing them in a new light. Every sympathetic nod, every shared confidence, every moment of connection, all had been carefully orchestrated to build trust. The district attorney called an emergency meeting with all the families involved in the case. "This new evidence strengthens our position," she explained. "We're not just dealing with unauthorized medical practice anymore. We're looking at a pattern of sophisticated fraud across multiple states." As the meeting continued, Angela's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. "Lily's asking for you. She had a bad dream about Rose." Angela rushed home to find her daughter curled up on the couch, clutching her favorite stuffed animal. "I remembered something," Lily said quietly. "Rose used to make phone calls when she thought I was napping. She used different names sometimes." This new detail sent Angela back to the detective's office. They began investigating Patricia's phone records, uncovering calls to dozens of potential victims across the country. She had been planning her next moves even while working for current families. The prosecution team worked late into the night, preparing for the preliminary hearing. They now had evidence of a criminal enterprise that stretched back years and crossed state lines. Federal authorities were getting involved. "We need to be careful how we present this," the prosecutor warned. "The jury needs to understand the level of manipulation involved, how she used people's trust and goodwill against them." The morning of the preliminary hearing arrived with unexpected news. Another reporter had uncovered Patricia's earliest known identity, her real one. Born into a wealthy family, she had started her schemes in college, creating false identities to gain access to trust funds and medical records. As Angela prepared to enter the courthouse, reporter Thomas caught up with her. "There's one more thing you should know," he said, handing her a final document. "We found her real daughter." Angela looked at the photo in shock. The young woman in the image was instantly recognizable. She was one of Patricia's supposed references, the one who had given Angela such a glowing recommendation. "She's been working with her mother all along," reporter Thomas explained. "They're both part of a larger network that targets families across the country." The revelation sent shockwaves through the case. What had started as an investigation into unauthorized medical treatments had uncovered a sophisticated criminal organization hiding behind a facade of care and compassion. As Angela walked into the courthouse, she squeezed her daughter's picture in her pocket. The truth about Patricia Montgomery was finally coming to light, but the biggest revelations were still to come. The courthouse buzzed with tension on the first day of the trial. Every seat in the courtroom was filled. Parents, reporters, and members of law enforcement who had worked on the case. Angela sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When Patricia Montgomery was led into the courtroom, a collective gasp rippled through the audience. Gone was the warm, nurturing woman they had known. In her place stood someone they'd barely recognized, her face hard, her eyes calculating as she surveyed the room. The prosecutor's opening statement laid bare the full scope of Patricia's operations. "What we have before us is not just a case of unauthorized medical practice," she began. "This is a story of calculated deception that spans decades and has harmed countless families across our nation." Evidence mounted as the trial proceeded. Financial records showed hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing through various accounts. Text messages revealed conversations between Patricia and her daughter, planning their elaborate schemes. Former victims from years past came forward to testify. One elderly couple traveled from across the country to share their story. "She came to us as a grief counselor after our son's death," the wife testified, her voice trembling. She said she had lost her own child, that she understood our pain. We trusted her with everything, our home, our finances, our deepest grief. It was all a lie. Detective Reynolds presented the evidence they had gathered about the larger network. These individuals operated like a well-oiled machine, she explained, pointing to a complex organizational chart. Each person played a specific role, providing false references, creating fake documents, scouting potential victims. The most dramatic moment came when Patricia's daughter took the stand. Initially called as a hostile witness, she surprised everyone by agreeing to testify against her mother in exchange for a reduced sentence. "I was raised in this life," she revealed, avoiding her mother's gaze. "From the time I was young, my mother taught me how to create false identities, how to gain people's trust, how to exploit their vulnerabilities. I thought it was normal until I saw what happened to that little girl, to Lily." Angela squeezed her daughter's photo tighter as she listened. Lily had recovered physically from her ordeal, but the emotional scars remained. They had started seeing a child psychologist to help her process the betrayal of someone she had trusted. The defense tried to paint Patricia as a misunderstood advocate for alternative medicine, but the evidence was overwhelming. Documents, recordings, and testimony from former associates revealed a pattern of deliberate deception stretching back more than 20 years. "She's not misguided, she's methodical," the prosecutor argued. Each identity was carefully crafted. Each story was designed to target specific vulnerabilities. This isn't about alternative medicine, it's about exploiting people's trust for profit. As the trial neared its end, Angela was called to give her testimony. She walked to the witness stand, her heart pounding but her voice steady as she recounted their experience. She described the careful way Patricia had gained their trust, the subtle manipulation, and the devastating consequences of her actions. "The worst part wasn't the physical danger she put my daughter in," Angela testified, looking directly at Patricia. "It was the way she twisted our trust. She made my daughter believe she was helping her, made her keep secrets from me. She didn't just endanger Lily's health, she tried to break our bond as mother and daughter." The jury took less than 6 hours to reach their verdict. Patricia Montgomery was found guilty on all counts: fraud, child endangerment, practicing medicine without a license, identity theft, and conspiracy. The judge's sentence was severe: 30 years in federal prison without the possibility of early parole. But the story didn't end with the verdict. The case had exposed serious gaps in childcare screening processes and the regulation of alternative medicine practitioners. Angela worked with lawmakers to draft new legislation, nicknamed Lily's Law, requiring stricter background checks and verification procedures for caregivers. The support group that had started with a handful of families grew into a national organization dedicated to helping victims of caregiver fraud. They developed resources to help parents verify credentials and recognize warning signs of deception. 6 months after the trial, Angela and Lily stood together at a podium, addressing a conference of childcare providers and parents. Lily, now more confident and healing from her experience, held her mother's hand as they shared their story. "We're here today not just as survivors," Angela told the audience, "but as advocates for change. Our experience taught us that trust must be earned and verified, but it also showed us the incredible strength of parents and children supporting each other through trauma." The changes rippled outward. Childcare agencies across the country adopted new screening procedures. Medical boards strengthened their oversight of alternative medicine practitioners. Parents became more aware of the importance of thorough background checks. One evening, as Angela helped Lily with her homework, her daughter asked a question that showed how far they'd come. "Mommy, do you think what happened to us helped other families stay safe?" Angela hugged her daughter close. "Yes, sweetheart, I think it did. Sometimes hard things happen so we can learn and help others. That's what makes us stronger." The final piece of closure came in the form of a letter from Patricia's daughter, written from the rehabilitation program she had entered as part of her plea deal. "I can't undo what we did," she wrote, "but I want you to know that your courage in standing up to us has changed lives. You've protected countless other families from going through what you experienced." As Angela tucked the letter away in her desk, she reflected on their journey. They had survived not just an individual's betrayal, but had helped expose and dismantle a system that preyed on vulnerable families. More importantly, they had shown that truth, justice, and love could triumph over deception. Their story became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of community to heal and protect its most vulnerable members. What had begun as a parent's worst nightmare had transformed into a movement for positive change. Life would never return to what it had been before Patricia entered their lives, but perhaps it had become something better, something stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Through their experience, they had helped create a world where families could feel a little safer and where trust, once broken, could be rebuilt on a foundation of truth and understanding.